Daddy gang, picture this. You just got one of the most prestigious internships in the country and you feel like your career is about to take off. You're so excited to be working alongside your boss, who is without a doubt the most important person, and everyone loves and admires this man. One day he starts to show you attention. He even begins to flirt with you, and one thing leads to another, and you guys end up in a full-blown secret relationship. For a while, everything's great. He's giving you gifts, he's making you feel special, and you confide in your coworker telling her everything about the relationship. But then one day, you're at the mall and the FBI surrounds you. They know about you and your boss's relationship because your coworker secretly recorded your conversations and turned them over to the FBI. They tell you if you don't cooperate, you will go to jail. Suddenly, every explicit detail of you and your married boss's relationship is released to the public. Next thing you know, your face is on the cover of every newspaper and every news channel is talking about you. They call you a slut and a whore. They criticize your body, and they embarrass you every single day for decades to come. You're not allowed to talk to your friends about it. You can barely leave your house. Your name and reputation are completely ruined, and your life crumbles before your eyes. Daddy gang, this is a true story. This is Monica Lewinsky's story. When Monica Lewinsky was 22 years old, she was an intern at the White House, and she ended up in a 2-year relationship with her boss, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Their relationship was exposed to the public after Linda Tripp, a woman Monica trusted as a close friend, secretly recorded their phone calls and handed them over to the FBI. After that moment, Monica's life was changed forever. She became the sole focus of a massive investigation that resulted in Bill Clinton's impeachment and her very public downfall. Despite, and I want to emphasize this, despite the 27-year age gap and a clear abuse of power from the president, Monica was the one who was ripped apart in the media. Her name became synonymous with blowjobs, and she was relentlessly slut-shamed, body-shamed, and publicly humiliated for years. Daddy gang, unfortunately, as women, we are way too familiar with the double standards of how men get treated in this world versus how women get treated. While Bill Clinton still gets to embrace and enjoy his life in the public eye, Monica has spent years working through the lasting effects of this trauma. So now, it is Monica's turn to reclaim her name and share her side of the story.
What is up, Daddy Gang? It is your founding father, Alex Cooper, with Call Her Daddy.
Monica Lewinsky, welcome to Call Her Daddy.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.
I am so happy we're finally meeting. It's been a long time coming. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a very, very long time. I think there's so much that we're going to talk about today that a lot of the women that listen to my show will be able to resonate with and also learn from. So thank you for taking the time. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little nervous. Yeah. I still get nervous with these kinds of things, but in general, I'm good. Yeah. I'm excited. It's a very busy. It's a time, as you know, launching a podcast. It's a lot more than I ever could have imagined.
That's what I was going to say. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are launching this podcast, obviously.
Yep.
First, you survived being the face of a global scandal when you were 24 years old.
Yeah.
Now you're launching this podcast called Reclaiming with Monica Lewinsky. And basically you are discussing what it means to take back your name.
Yeah.
Why did you want to do this now?
Well, it kind of felt for me like it was the next step for my own reclaiming and my own experiences of having lost my narrative almost my life at 24, and what that journey or process has been like to come back, that in many ways that's in the bones of the show. I think this idea of losing something and getting it back.
Let's talk about it. Your life completely changed once the news broke of your relationship with President Clinton. Can you take me to the day?
Yeah.
The world finds out about this. You find out that the world knows. Where were you and how did you find out?
So just to reel it back a few days, I found out about the investigation several days before the rest of the world did. There was a sting operation that happened at a shopping mall. And then I was there was a Ritz-Carlton attached to the shopping mall. And I was in the hotel room, really realizing that what felt like my life was over. Certainly my life was going to change, and that I was threatened with jail and essentially told if I didn't cooperate and wear a wire that I would go to jail for 27 years. So, oh my God. And so I kind of saw this train starting to barrel down the tracks, and I really felt like the January 21st, opening the door. I was living in the Watergate apartment complex with my mom. And so I remember opening the door. And these were in the days where people would get a newspaper delivered. And in DC, it was always several, like the Post and the New York Times. And I remember seeing my name above the fold and in the investigation, and looking down the hall and seeing the exact same newspaper outside everybody else's door. And it was shocking. It was terrifying. And I didn't actually know how to process anything. And really it was a moment where life as I knew it was over.
Call Her Daddy is brought to you by T-Mobile. When it's time for a big, juicy gossip session with one of my friends, I need a reliable way to get all the tea. And by tea, I mean T-Mobile, okay? Having more 5G coverage means getting 5G signal more often. And as someone who is constantly on the go, it is so nice to have a reliable network that I can count on. Being a T-Mobile customer also means that I have access to a ton of perks like concert tickets, skipping lines at events, and free in-flight Wi-Fi so I can keep posting from the sky. That free in-flight Wi-Fi has been key lately because we're trying to find my best friend Lauren a man on every flight we take, and I have to keep the Daddy Gang updated live with our progress. T-Mobile also has VIP Club Magenta lounges that offer free drinks for T-Mobile customers, and you guys know I can't say no to a free dirty martini. So, Daddy Gang, kick your old carrier to the curb. It is time to block their number. Then go and hit up T-Mobile when you're ready to really be taken care of. Check out the VIP treatment at tmobile.com/benefits.
One, my heart just breaks for you because I'm thinking about myself when I was 24, and I'm thinking about all of the women that are watching when you're 24 years old.
Yeah.
Like, your frontal lobe is still not fully developed.
100%.
You're in a situation that, like, how would you know how to respond that you're saying they're coming to you and saying, if you don't wear this wire, you're going to go to jail? Like, were you able to confide in at least, like, your mom? Like, did you have to hold all of this by yourself in that moment?
Well, I think the moment in the
Hotel.
So in the hotel room, they wouldn't let me call anybody at first. So, and I had a pager. So my mom kept paging me. And eventually I said, I was like, look, if you don't let me call my mom, she's going to really start to worry. So they finally, they all huddled. There were a whole bunch of them, and they were in this connecting room to the hotel. And the room I was in, the connecting hotel room, had a whole bunch of other FBI agents in it and lawyers from the independent counsel's office. And so they finally said, okay, you can call your mom. And these are in the days of, a handheld phone. So I'm holding the phone, and the agent had his finger over the hang up button. And so it was this, you just begin to understand subtly, maybe not so subtle, but the kind of nonverbal ways that you're starting to understand how much trouble you're in. When I had to go to the bathroom, they went in because there was a phone in the bathroom. They took the receiver out of the wall. So it was, but eventually I was allowed to go ask for my mom, because they wouldn't. There was a point where they all came in the room. This had been a few hours, and I had kind of refused to cooperate still at that point. And they sort of sent in the heavy. And at that point, it was the pressure tactics. And so I basically said, I can't make a decision unless I talk to my mom. So they finally let me call my mom. And then she came down from New York, and so I was waiting for her to come down. And then she called my dad, who was at a medical conference, and with his best friend, who was a malpractice attorney, which is how I ended up with a malpractice attorney as my first attorney.
There's a level of we can't fathom what, as a young woman, you were feeling in that pretty terrifying experience of all these people telling you what you needed to do. You don't have a chance to think for yourself.
I couldn't call a lawyer. I had asked to call a lawyer. Yep. So from moment one, because I think we all, we all know from TV and the movies, right? Like when it happens in TV and the movies, the usually a man comes and flashes their badge. Yes. You're like, I'm not talking to you without my lawyer. And they said, well, that's fine, but you won't be able to get as much information and help yourself as much. And then I was actively discouraged from getting a lawyer. And I remember very distinctly the moment of it sinking in about what it would mean for this to come out and impact my family. So I had a younger brother in college. My dad's upstanding doctor in the community. My mom has her own world too, and my stepmom, and so that and the kind of shame and knowing that I had felt very responsible in that point too, because I knew I had talked about things that it was expected I would not have talked about them. Yeah. So
the media attention, there's paparazzi outside at all times. What were you doing every day? Were you going stir crazy?
Oh yeah. First I was obsessed with the case. I think too, just to paint a little bit of a landscape of what the media life was like, because we have a sense of how things are today with the how we could get inundated with a story online with social media. Now there are 8 bajillion outlets. But what it meant back then was this story was actually, instead of a story having legs for a week, which is considered a long time in today's world, yes. It was a year. It was a year of coverage. In the first 10 days of the investigation, the Washington Post alone had published 127 articles. So that's 12 articles a day on just this story. So that was one news outlet, and this was global.
Can you explain initially, once this all broke, how right off the bat was the media portraying you?
Oh, I think for 5 seconds, it was sympathetic. And maybe after about a week, once the White House got in gear, I was very quickly painted as a stalker, a whore, mentally unstable, a bimbo, both the pursuer in this and also not attractive enough to be pursued. And And really there was a creation of a version of me that I didn't recognize and my friends and family didn't recognize. And that's what happens when you have a power imbalance in a story where media is so integral to it unfolding.
I can't imagine the feeling of like for a second being like, well, I guess that's what happened. Oh my God, wait, that's not me. Why are they calling me a whore? Why are they calling me a slut? Or how am I the pursuer? Like what? Can you explain how the name calling and the slut shaming slowly started to chip away at the way you felt about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think I can't say this for everybody who gets involved in a relationship with someone who's, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it, but it's like, I think not everybody who has an affair feels this way, but I think a lot of people, especially young women who get involved in affairs, it already starts with a lack of self-esteem and self-worth. So I already had issues. It was this, it's kind of your worst nightmare of like all the worst things that you think about yourself and say to yourself, you then start to have reflected and amplified by the whole world. And so it was, if it hadn't been for my family continuing to remind me of my true self, and then eventually when I was able to have my friends come in, I don't think I would have been able to make it through. I think there were really sort of two parts of me. There was both this more damaged younger part of me who was soaking up all the negativity, and it was like a tsunami and just making a bad situation worse. And then there was maybe a future version of me or a higher self or whatever who was angry, who started to get angry. So there were times that I was angry or frustrated. I was so humiliated.
Once you got out of this isolation, essentially, I guess we could call it, right? How did people in your life treat you? And did you see a difference in the way that like men versus women treated you? Like, was there a difference?
I think what was interesting that I started to see in the public arena was that it very sadly, it was a lot of women who said worse things about me than the men. The men told a lot of jokes, right? So the late night hosts, I think when Jay Leno retired, some media boop-de-boop, whatever organization had done a study and listed the top 10 targets, his top 10 targets of his late night show. And I was on that list. And I was the only person who wasn't a public figure in this, these are, so it was, I think the men told the jokes, the women sort of eviscerated me. And look, also let's recognize that while there were so many ways that I think Bill's behavior was more reprehensible than mine, I did make mistakes. So I think we see it very differently now. And even through that lens, I still made mistakes. I still did things that were wrong.
I think I've recognized, and I think a lot of women can experience too, especially with media now, it's like, which we'll get to about the double standard, because yes, you made the mistake, but I feel like there's also a conversation online of just like, but the person within the marriage is the one that truly has the right and is supposed to be the loyal one. And I find that we are always crucifying the other woman. And then there's a level of complexity of there is a power imbalance of you are 22 and this man is 49. Yeah. So there's so much complexity of it makes me sad for you that women tearing you down, I get it with an affair. I think it's a trigger point for a lot of women.
Yeah.
The way that they could identify whether they had been cheated on by their
Sure.
husbands. You know what I mean? Everyone's coming at it from the angle that they can personally relate to, or their fears or their insecurities. But the outbreak essentially from all these women towards you, in my opinion, like, it's devastating, because now I think hopefully, like, do you feel a difference when women talk to you about it today versus back then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think that it really was the younger generation. When I wrote my first person essay for Vanity Fair in 2014, it was, your generation and the younger generations that really insisted on reevaluating this story, because you were all coming to it with just the facts, not having gone through the brainwashing or lived through that media lens, and bringing different perspectives that happen throughout generations, right? From generations. And so it was really interesting to have this front row seat to observe. In the very beginning of the article coming out, it was sort of the same voices saying the same thing. Oh, go away. You had your 15 minutes. And then it was the younger generation, the younger journalists, the younger women journalists who were starting to say, hold up. All the things that you just said about the power differentials on both from age and within the resources of both money and power, and kind of, people who work for you who are able to disseminate information. I had to, hire lawyers. I'd never done any of those things.
Call Her Daddy is brought to you by the original Peacock film, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy. You heard that right, Daddy Gang. Our girl Bridget is back for one last chapter. Renee Zellweger returns to her role as the iconic rom-com heroine that defined a genre. Now juggling 2 kids, going back to work, and the world of online dating, Bridget is just as endearing and hilarious as ever. Also, back are fan favorites like her best friend Shazzer, Dr. Rawlings, and yes, Hugh Grant as the charming yet devious Daniel Cleaver. Of course, Bridget wouldn't be Bridget if she weren't once again caught between 2 hot love interests played by Leo Woodall and Chiwetel Ejiofor. So pour yourself a drink, don't forget the tissues, and make it a movie night with Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, streaming only on Peacock.
The White House basically left you out to dry after the president made a public statement claiming he never had sexual relations with you. How did you feel having to watch that and hear him say that?
In the moment, I was split because I felt so guilty. I felt so guilty for everything. I felt like this having become public was my fault.
Why?
Because I had confided in Linda. And so if I had not confided in her, I felt as if this wouldn't have become public. And so there was an enormous amount of guilt. I didn't want him to lose his job. So there was a part of me that felt, good, deny it. This is what you should do. That sort of a thing. And then there was a part of me that was so humiliated, and to kind of have the most powerful man in the world saying that, basically your damaged goods, like, is not something you want as a 51-year-old woman, and not something you want as a 24-year-old woman.
The White House, like you referenced earlier, tried to frame you as this like unstable stalker. But what the evidence then went on to reveal was the president called you often, gave you gifts. How did you, at the end of the day, during all this, reconcile what people were saying about your relationship and then what you knew to be true and what you lived with this person?
It was gaslighting. So I think that was what I experienced on a pretty large scale. Mm-hmm. And it was devastating. It was devastating at the time. And I think what we see now in today's world, and as a grown woman. I hate to break it to any 24-year-olds listening to this, because I know from 21 to 25, you think you know everything. You're like, I'm a fucking adult now. I know everything.
True.
I'm so sorry to tell you, you will look back on this time and be like, oh, little 20-year-old me.
Little girl.
So I thought it was something it wasn't. And my feelings were real. And it was very frustrating and painful to have people talking about this in a way that was untrue.
In the midst of all of this, we're talking about how you're reading things online about yourself. You're watching the news. They're calling you a whore and they're slut shaming you and they're calling you unstable and mentally unstable. And you're seeing all of this. Did you ever have a moment during all of this where you started to doubt yourself and you started to feel like you were going a little crazy?
Oh, 100%. I think that there were, right? That's the whole goal of gaslighting, right? So, I mean, I don't think the White House's intention was to gaslight me. I think the intention was to stay in power and to get out of legal jeopardy. But that's, I think that is the core of being gaslit, is you do start to doubt yourself.
I also think what I want to get into talking about too is like, as a young person, when you're going through something traumatic, your understanding of it in the moment is that, and then you're also somewhat in fight or flight and you're like trying to digest it in any capacity you can. And then as time goes on, you're able to, with time in a beautiful way, start to actually look at it a little bit more objectively as time goes on, because you're farther away from it. So I can imagine like the way that you felt about it in the moment, you now have different perspectives, and that's okay. And I think there's like a lot of shame of people who go through these traumatic moments in their life where people are like, well, how did you feel in that exact moment? You're like, I don't know. I need to process it. I need time to think. And I can imagine people asking you questions, paparazzi being outside. It's like, being up on a stand. It's like, you knew the truth, but you also had to protect your like mental sanity of like, I need time to heal and to digest the fact that I thought I was in this relationship. Now it's out to the world. What is happening?
Right.
Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
What was your rock bottom moment in all of this?
Oh my gosh, there were many. It's interesting. In the moment, the rock bottom moment was probably, it was several months into the investigation, and I guess whatever the layering of whatever had come out in the news that day, whatever it was just too much. And I had remembered thinking, okay, I was able to, the first 2 weeks of the investigation, I didn't have a therapist. I couldn't go on medication. And eventually I was able to get a therapist who had to be a forensic psychologist, who was amazing, Dr. Susan. I'm still grateful to her today. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I'm going to call her. And if she answers, then I'm staying. And if she doesn't, I'm out. So I think for me, that was rock bottom. And that again, just kind of the maelstrom of media and 24-hour news and the internet, the report coming out was the first time that you missed history being made if you didn't have access to the internet. Yeah. Like, Google had just launched, web traffic doubled overnight. Like, it's just, those are the kinds of things that we just can't even fathom now, right? I mean, and this was all pre-social media, but all the news outlets had like www representation and comment sections and things like that. So that was, that was a moment where I don't know, sorry, I'm babbling a bit, but
you're doing great.
I don't know if you ever had anything like this when you were growing up, but I had a couple of different moments in grade school where it was like, I did something embarrassing, and that feeling of like, I don't want to go to school. The whole class knows, the whole grade knows, everybody's going to this and that. And so that's one level of what we experience. Or if I'm at a dinner party and I don't drink anymore, but if I knocked over a glass of red wine on the white tablecloth, you're mortified in front of this group, and you're able to draw a mental perimeter around that. And what I experienced, and now why I care so much about anti-bullying with young people, because I understand what this is online and with social media, there is no border. And it literally feels like the entire world is laughing at you. And it is devastating.
I appreciate you explaining it like that, because I never thought about it. Like when you're in that restaurant and you spill the wine, you go home that night and you envision those exact faces at that table. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh my God, I hope they forget this. I hope that but you have a visual.
Right.
And what you're describing, if anything, you have like the most real, horrific lived experience of what now so many kids are living online, which is this like unseen beast out there that is talking about you, that is taunting you, that is speaking about you, and they've never met you. Yeah. They don't know you. They don't know your character. They're just taking what they've seen, glimpses online. Like, didn't they even just like use your passport photo when they—
Oh my God, my work passport photo. Jesus, it was the worst.
But it's all manipulated. Right? Like, who wants their passport photo? No. But that's so media to train someone to believe something about yourself. Yeah. In those rock bottom moments that you just shared with me, like having the weight of truly the world on you, of people talking about you, and you were contemplating, is it easier to just not be here? Yeah. What kept you going?
I call them moments of grace. And so I think if you have that moment of grace, and I don't know that beauty is the right word, but the beauty of having one moment of grace is that somewhere lodged in the back of your mind will always be that experience of having had that grace. You get through the moment and things get better. It doesn't always just continue better and better for the rest of your life. But once you've, and it's especially why I worry so much about young people, because they haven't had enough life experience to, like, now at 51, when something, bad happens and feels devastating, I have a whole folder of times that I've had fucked up thing happen. I'm devastated, whatever it is. And then it got better, and now I panic even less and less, which is amazing. I'm so grateful for that. So yeah, don't let young people listening, don't let anybody tell you it is not great to get older, because your 50s are fucking amazing. Yeah. You have a long time to get there, girl, but it's amazing to feel so comfortable with yourself.
Right. And to know what to expect, know how you react, know what upsets you, know what you can get through, like your threshold, you start to learn more and more.
Well, I think really, and maybe women of older generations weren't able to do this, but at least how I feel is I know the operating manual to me. And that is one of the most empowering things I think anybody can have, but especially a woman.
It is so heartbreaking because you weren't the only one that participated in this relationship. Right. And yet you were the one who objectively took the hardest hit.
Yeah.
Did you ever enter the anger stage where you were like, fuck this?
Yeah, it took me a really long time. And like, I was not until 2010. So this 1998 to 2010, I would have moments of being angry, but I didn't realize how much I had lost until I came out of graduate school and I couldn't get a job. And that, and also I think at the point where I was, because I was in my early 30s. So now all of my friends have gotten married. Most of them have kids. Some of them are even like going on to their second marriages, second and third kids. And I have nothing, or that feeling of nothing. And, it very much was, that was the point when I realized how much had been taken from me.
To also be fair, and I think that's like a very normal answer, that anyone who has experienced a form of trauma would be like, I'm not going to say like dissociating, but in some capacity, you have to dissociate to keep moving. And then one day it just kind of hits you of your reality because you've gone through enough to get yourself back on your feet. And like you said, you graduate and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go get a job. This is normal. And then it's like, no, you can't get a job. When you say that though, Monica, like, what do you mean? Like, people were literally turning you down in job interviews?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was everything from, I wasn't even allowed to go interview certain places. Like a place would say, no, we don't, you can't even come interview, even though I was qualified to, because it was 2007 when I was job hunting. I was, and then Hillary was running in 2008. So there was this high likelihood that she would become president or could get the nomination. So I think at that point she was expected to get the nomination, but of course Barack Obama did. So at this period of time when I am job hunting, people were saying, well, could you get a letter of indemnity? I can never say this. I had Bell's palsy a few years ago. So sometimes, so sometimes some words are still a little hard for me, but asked me if I could get a letter of indemnification. If they hired me, because they relied on grants. And so they were worried that they would lose all their funding. So it was, there were a couple places that, were interested to hire me, but would be like, well, you'd be interacting with the media. So, I mean, it's just,
Was there ever a point that not that you should, but was there ever a point that you or anyone in your family thought of changing your name or your last name at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there was definitely a period of time that I contemplated it, except given the world we lived in, I couldn't even see a reality of that, right? Like, how is that really going to work, right? I'm going to walk down the street in LA where I was raised and run into someone and they'll say Monica and I'll, oh, my name is Rebecca now. I mean, like I didn't even know how that would work. Or people had suggested to me, well, you could put a different name on your CV. And I thought about that. But then, when you play that forward, so what, I'm going to walk into a job interview. The person in their head is like, that girl looks a lot like Monica Lewinsky. And, and they're looking at me and I'm looking at them. And, it's just, and then you're also starting out, it's sort of like part of why I haven't online dated is that whole thing of if you don't want to use your name, you're starting something out with a lie, so that doesn't totally feel right to me either. So but really more than just the practicality, I think as time went on, I also came to feel very strongly that I didn't want to change my name. Why should I have to change my name? I bet nobody has asked Bill if he needed, did he ever think about changing his? Okay, I get because he was the most famous person in the world at a moment, but and president, etc. But just even the idea would never cross someone's mind to a man, and
Ever.
And also too, I regret a lot of different decisions I've made, both prior to 98, post 98. Like I'm a human being, but I'm not ashamed of who I am, and so I think that was a really important thing.
And I hope in me asking that, like, I don't think you should change your name, but hearing what you went through, I understand like there may be people around you being like, Monica, like to get a job, maybe change last name. Like that is, I interviewed Amanda Knox at one point, right? Yeah. And it's like, there is this horrible reality that you have to, which we're going to get to eventually, of like, you have to decide how you're going to live your life, and you can't just keep letting other people dictate it, even though it's pretty fucking hard, because you're saying, I'm walking in places and no one will hire me.
Yeah.
And it's like, because like, it's like, if in the grand scheme, how are you not getting a fucking job? You know what I mean? Like, you're a qualified.
Well, and I was so lucky that I came from an upper middle class family that could help support me, because I couldn't earn an income. But you really, when you're sitting inside a scandal like this, you really come to understand why a lot of times women make the choices they do, because those are the only fucking options they have, is to maybe pose nude in a magazine because you will get money and you can pay rent and put food on the table, And so it's
That's a great point.
you really come to understand choices people make and how hard it can be. I often think about that we don't examine and judge people by the things they don't do or the things they turn down, So
true.
I mean, yeah.
To add color for my audience, I just want to read this. You were 22 years old. He was 49. You were an intern. He was the president of the United States. There is a clear power imbalance that they never focused on in the media when all this was coming out. How aware were you of this power imbalance?
I don't think that was something we talked about, very much back then, in the same way that we didn't have words like slut shaming and fat shaming. I think this story became, it felt very bifurcated. It was like most Democrats, whether they believed him or not, were supportive. Most Republicans, whether they, were opposed. And that wasn't something that we talked about a lot. And I think that it was really in the wake of Me Too 2.0 that we really started to look at power imbalances under the umbrella of abuse of power.
Yeah. In 2014, you said the relationship was consensual. In 2018, you said you were just reevaluating how power dynamics impact consent. Now, today, where do you stand?
Call Her Daddy is brought to you by Tinder. Dating app culture has gotten so complicated. I feel like every week I hear about a new app with new rules. It's time to just go back to our roots, you guys. Tinder is back, and it's easier than ever to put yourself out there. The OG dating app is here for whatever you're looking for: a partner, a date, just a booty call. I see you out there, and Tinder's got you covered. A new relationship starts on Tinder every 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds. You could have 3 boyfriends by now if you were swiping during this ad, okay? And if you do have 3 Tinder boyfriends right now, please report back to me. That sounds messy, and I want all the details. Let's put the fun back into dating apps. Dating isn't supposed to be stressful. Tinder gives you the freedom to meet people your way. So instead of overthinking an opening line, just go and shoot your shot. If you've been looking for a sign to simplify the dating game, this is it. Explore all the possibilities for yourself. Tinder, it starts with a swipe. Download Tinder today.
In 2014, you said the relationship was consensual. In 2018, you said you were just reevaluating how power dynamics impact consent. Now, today, where do you stand?
It's really still, I kind of landed in the place that I landed in 2018, which was this sense of, I'm very clear this was not sexual assault. And therefore there's a level of consensuality that was there. And at the same time, because of the power dynamics and the power differential, I never should have fucking been in that position. And so that's where you just can't even, I think that you can't even understand what you're walking into. And that's where it's the responsibility of the person with more power. And that power can be age. It can be their job. It can be their financial resources. There could be myriad reasons that they have the tilt towards the power that way.
No, and I appreciate you saying that, because the reality is even when I'm going back and reading these headlines, it's
oh my
like
gosh.
the chaos of like that people believed, even the people writing it, that like you were this person coming, like he's the president of the United fucking States. Like
they're Secret Service. Like you're can't
sneaking through the halls and you're like going after him. Like it's so
like it doesn't work that way.
You know what I mean? And it's so that again, Monica, and why I appreciate you talking with me about this is I see it every day still in media, in different corners of social media even, where a woman is being pinned as something.
Yeah.
And when you are a woman that's had any form of what you're discussing and what I'm discussing of the slut shaming or the judgment or the double standard, it's so obvious as a woman where I'm like, no, there's just no fucking like hold on.
Yeah.
He's the president and and I think in a gorgeous way, I hope that we're making some progress.
I think we have. I think I don't know that it would be as different as people think it would be if it were, with a young, charismatic, democratic president. But I think we have made some strides, just even in the fact that we have language, that we now have nomenclature for these kinds of things that allow for more nuanced conversations.
That's a good point. When you look back, once the news broke and how everything was handled by media and the White House, how do you think it should have been handled? Have you thought about that?
Oh my gosh. I think that he should have said, I'm like now thinking this through. I don't think I've answered this question before. But good question. I haven't been asked that before. So I think that the right way to handle a situation like that would have been to probably say it was, nobody's business and to resign, or to find a way of staying in office that was not lying and not throwing a young person who was just starting out in the world under the bus. And at the same time, I'm hearing myself say that. And it's like, okay, but we're also talking about the most powerful office in the world, so I don't want to be naive either. But
I love that answer because you're being honest. You're like, as a human being, if we take a step back, that I agree with you. That is exactly how it should have been handled. It's the least they could have done for you, right? And not even for you, just for
for anybody, right?
It was the truth, right? But then we're talking about the White House. And I think this is where it gets complicated because at what cost are you just kind of thrown to the wolves to protect something larger? I don't know. I know we both don't have the answer, and I think it's okay.
Complicated, it's really complicated because you are talking about issues and situations where so many people are impacted. So I don't, and maybe this is a reflection of my generation or my age, but I don't know where the right balance is, because there was damage no matter what. I think there was so much collateral damage for women of my generation to watch a young woman to be pilloried on the world stage, to be torn apart, for my sexuality, for my mistakes, for my everything.
What you're saying though is, I hear what you're saying. It's like, this was such a large statement to the world about the way, and I get what you're saying, at the time there wasn't this language, but the double standard, here's the fucking example right here.
Yeah.
Right what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Look what came from all of this for you and for then the other party. It's just, it's not.
The consequences were just nowhere, I lost my future. So, I mean, that was, that really was, I was lucky enough to hold on to a strand of my true self.
Yeah.
But I lost my future.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for how my life has changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, that certainly was not a given, you know.
You made many public apologies. Have you ever received one in return?
I have had a handful of people who were involved at the time that I've run into in different ways who have acknowledged that they wish they had made different choices. None of the people who were, you know, sort of the above the fold names involved in the investigation. And I'm really grateful that I'm at a place where I don't need it anymore.
Was there ever a time where you felt like you did?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Well, I think that's, you know, and that this is sort of something I don't know that I fully unpacked it yet for myself. You know, I think a lot of times with the writing I do, it's like I have an idea for something and I sort of plant the seed and just let it. I'm like, okay, in some version of me, it's like figuring itself out to worm its way out onto a page. But I think that a lot of that has to do with this, the intersection of as my life changed, as people saw me more and more as my true self, as I was able to have more agency, that those things became less important because I was been able to, even though I will always be defined in some way by my history, I am also defined by my present. And it's important.
It's beautiful because I can imagine like the way that you're talking about being isolated and being trapped and not being able to speak to people for 8 months and the emotional trauma that can do to a human being. Like you said, you weren't prepared for any of this and it hit you in the face and you had to just run with it because you had no other option to survive.
Right.
And then you come out of this and it's like, how many times did you think like, wow, there is a potential this will stay with me for the rest of my life?
Well, I had a whole, I call it my dark decade. I mean, it was a whole period of floundering and having no purpose. I mean, I'm always lucky. My family's always been amazing.
Yeah.
I've always had friends, thank God.
You stepped away for about 10 years.
That was
the time.
Yeah.
Did you date at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have always dated, not always successfully dated.
Yeah.
And I was somebody who had wanted to get married and have kids. And I'm sort of past that point of having kids naturally. So that, I think that was a focus for a long time, but it was definitely, my dating life has been complicated, I think at times, you know.
In dating, when you were trying to get back to some form of normalcy, like did you find in moments that like men were kind of in it for the wrong reason?
I've had a couple instances like that. I mean, it's sort of this wide spectrum of I think my bullshit detector for someone who was there for the wrong reason has been pretty strong, luckily. But then there have been, you know, there's a wide spectrum of like how intimacy goes after something like this. And it's, you know, it's like, I mean, thankfully no one's ever asked me to wear a beret in the bedroom, but you know, I mean, there have been, you know, it's complicated. Look, I think our comfort level and it might be generational, but I think comfort level of really feeling like you can own your own sexuality fully can be one layer that many of us go through when you add on the way I was sexualized and humiliated around sex. You know, it makes it more complicated, you know, so
I appreciate you sharing that though, because like I couldn't help but think, there was this massive focus on your sex life in your 20s. And I've even talked about it in the beginning days of my show. It was way more sexual and it was fun. But then I would go on dates and I was like, wait, no, like I think you have the wrong idea.
Or that's one part of me.
Yeah,
I know
that's
what I mean. It's funny because what was amazing to me, I was thinking about coming in and sitting down with you, and it was like, oh, thanks to I think it was episode 3. I'm like, you took the mantle of blowjob queen. I cannot thank you enough. Monica, so it was,
oh my God.
What was it? The GG 9000?
The Gluck Gluck 9000, girl. But it's, I'm obsessed that you just said that. But that in itself is like, there's the reclaiming of as women to be like, I'm going to own it first before you can own it. But then you talking about, being slut shamed, like how did you start to trust people again? Like getting into a relationship with a man or going into a bedroom with a man that you think you trust.
It's, I think that the first handful of years, I was very self-conscious because of how I'd been sexualized and because as we were talking before of having the most powerful man, wag their finger and say I didn't have sex with that woman. And George Lakoff wrote this essay where he was talking about how I wrote about this a little in one of my articles, but how we see, because we haven't had a fucking woman president yet, but we see the male president as a father figure. This idea of the father of the country saying, right. And so I had concerns about that. And I think that there, again, as because of my own self-esteem issues already, I think that it impacted things. And I don't drink anymore. I mean, I have champagne on rare. I'm not sober. I just don't drink. So but I think that helped for a while. And then, I joke now, if I were still drinking, I'd probably have a lot more sex, right. But, because the moment in the night, the moment in the night was or I should say more casual sex, but that moment in the night where you're sort of going to lean into this thing, you start to get more self-conscious,
yes, Yes. And you start to get more self-conscious and then you get in your head, and I get what you're saying, having a glass of wine, it relaxes you. But I see what you're saying. It's this again, the smaller version of what you experienced when I think so many women can relate to, whether it's middle school or high school or college, and a guy runs around saying something about a hookup with you, whether it was true or a lie. I've had that happen to me where you're like, that's not true. And you're so embarrassed. Yeah. And a lot of those moments, I then would replay my exchanges with that person. And I don't know if you had this where you're self-consciously being made fun of. So then you're like, well, what did I do I make sense a little bit here? You're just replaying what did I do and what was I like? And as a woman, so much of our worth people put on us is our sexuality. Mm-hmm. So then to be publicly put down, you're like, oh my God. And as a 24-year-old woman, then it's what am I worth? And of course you're worth everything more than that. But at the time, your self-worth is
well, and I had a lot of, I had some sexual trauma from when I was younger that, we didn't have language for the kinds of things that, that happened. And so you don't even know that you're acting out, you don't even know, you can't even piece those things together. So it's, it is, but I've also been really lucky in, I haven't been super successful at a relationship. I haven't been successful at all at a relationship that goes the full distance. But I have been really lucky and dated some amazing men. And those men, each in their own way, have helped me find a piece of myself again,
Shame.
Oh,
Can we talk about that for all the young women listening?
yeah.
You have tackled it head on, quite literally. And it is something that I think every woman in our lifetime, we experience it in a way that men just will not understand.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit, if you have any advice on how to overcome shame as a woman when someone is putting you down, again, sexually, for not being enough,
Right.
whatever it be?
I guess my brain's going in a few places,
Yeah.
but I guess the kind of good news and bad news is the good news is that those moments will dissipate, like that shame spear that stabs you, that wound will heal. The bad news is that we like keep dealing with shame in different ways throughout life.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the thing that is, I think of shame almost being like a bacteria in a petri dish. That it's like when you put it into this petri dish and it's all by itself, it just grows, but it's still alone. And that's the thing to know the most, is that almost everything anybody might feel shame about, somebody else is feeling the same thing. Like it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to feel some shame, but for it to lessen a bit, in some ways. And it is, I wish, we get to a place in our world where women can just sort of like shirk the shame, and just, you can't even be shamed.
Yeah.
Because that's what we see with some men in the world, who are shameless.
Yeah.
And that's, it's complicated. It's something I still deal with, so less and less.
I want to just kind of conclude on the double standards.
Okay.
Any advice for women when it comes to navigating double standards in how we are treated versus men? I can only imagine the amount of women listening that have a workplace dynamic with a boss, or a relationship, or like you said, a financial situation. Like, do you have any advice?
I don't know how successful I have been in trying to navigate the double standards. I think in some ways my own reclaiming is trying to open a path or continue a path that not a lot of women have been able to go through before, which is to be a fallen woman and to rise. And so letting many other women know it doesn't, I'm not the one to say this. This is like a well-known quote of just, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It matters how many you get up. And so I think that's the most important thing. Yeah. So I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you on that.
Monica, it's like the most honest answer you can give, because I have sat with so many people. I literally call my mom about it in moments where I'm frustrated if I see something online or in my real personal life. Like, I grapple with it constantly because I start conversations like this. Like, what do we do, Monica? Like, you experienced something on the biggest platform in the world. How do we change this? Because as much as I would like to say it wouldn't happen to another woman again, I do think it could happen to another woman again, looking at like what's going on in our world. And so I do think the reality, as upsetting as it is to say, is like, I don't think there is a solution yet.
Yeah.
Because
but we're working,
exactly.
And I think the thing that is so important about change, and it's one of the things I admire about you, and I'm so excited for you and grateful to you, is that you are pushing forward in a path in business and podcasts as a young woman, right up there with these men who are valuing what their contribution is in their podcast, and they're having that reflected to them and what they've sold them for. And you have done that, Alex. Like, I hope you take that in every day. Because of you, other women are going to be able to have successful podcasts that they then move on to other places for
I can't,
you know what I mean?
No, I can't. First of all, I can't thank you enough for saying that. But I hope I feel the same way about you. The fact that you have chosen to sit here and continue to sit in front of cameras and speak about your experience, it like makes me emotional. It's like, there are so many women that look at you and it's like, if she can get through that, then I can get through this. And it's not that it should be your job to make people feel more seen and more hopeful, but it is so incredible that you haven't given up and that you didn't just go away and just decide to like pull back. Like, you kept your fucking name, Monica Lewinsky, and you're not going anywhere. And that's why I'm so excited for you. Podcasting is so incredible.
It's so hard.
It's so hard, but it's so incredible.
Hard. It's so much harder than I thought.
Everyone will give you grace in the fact that you are going on to this new venture.
Okay.
I am so excited for you. I am going to give you my personal number and I'm here.
Okay.
If you need any advice.
Okay.
Okay. Last question.
Okay.
If you could go back.
Yeah.
And talk to your 22-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Do not go to Washington.
Monica, thank you so much for coming on Call Her Daddy.
Thank you, Alex. This was so lovely.